understand how to design phenomenal learning and create phenomenal learning entities. And this is the background, and it's not only that. I, as a teacher, and very young and eager teacher, I was all interested about how to integrate disciplines and how to create active, child-centered learning. And I've actually done it for my teacher career, and then later I started to study it. Oh, she wants to tell what I. So so in my dissertation there is a short summary in English, maybe 10 or 15 pages, and it's online, but it's written in Finnish. I'm sorry. My brother who lives in California was like, oh my goodness, you haven't translated, but it's too much of a work. So I'm currently working on a paper where I've written it in English, and I hope it will be published in some journal. And there I tell about this in English more. I have also made videos. I will share those to you later, in next meeting, I think, or maybe even if I will create a flipped classroom task for you to start to get to know about these things before we will meet next time. So I've already done English videos about this. But according to my research, the roots of phenomenal learning are deep in Dewey's progressive pedagogy. And as we think that why to bring all these new methodologies to school, why don't we respect the old habits? I would say, well, then we have to respect phenomenal learning, because it's so old. Because even John Dewey already talked about this all. And as I found out when I was doing my research, I found this chapter from Dewey's book where he describes that I go to a classroom, children are planning these farms, they are creating the stories for the parents and for the children, they are designing the houses for them and designing the farms, and what do they have, their cows or pigs or what, and they are making all these buildings, little buildings, and drawing them like architects and calculating their funding and everything. It sounds just like phenomenal learning in 2023, and it was a description of a school in Chicago 1912 or something, 100 years ago. So it's so important to understand that we already have these wonderful ideas in our history that we can dive and we can. I think that in Finland we have brought to daylight this Deweyan progressive pedagogy. But we have refined it and we have really made it easier to adapt. And we really do it in our schools. So this is this statement is from Dewey. The child is the sun, or pitted, how do you spell it, pronounce it, or guided by the tools of education. So who is in the center of learning? The child. We are servants for them. We have to make the best for them, and we have the best job in the world because we have a chance to lead these children towards their own best abilities and understanding of what they can do, who they are, how to operate in this digital world that is totally different from the world we grew up in. I can say there's nobody who is 21 here. And that's exactly what happened when Dewey was doing his most innovative experiments, because those days it was transformation from farming to industrial world. Now we live this kind of area again. this kind of days again, but we have moved to digital world. So this is a big transformation, and we need to adapt to it in schools too, as teachers. We are gatekeepers as teacher trainers, and I think that even more important nowadays as teacher educators is to help them to understand how to design teaching, because information is easily available everywhere. We are not anymore the holders of information and then we give teaching, that's it. We are even more, we need to help them to understand how to reflect information, how to collect it, what is true, what is not, how to use digital tools, how to work in media, social media, and what is true and what is not, and how to cooperate, how to be creative, how to solve these problems that have become very dangerous for human beings to live here, like global warming and this unbelievable war. I think that peace education in our project is very important. So we really need to think through how could we educate our children to become peaceful in their mind, to start understand that each of us are equal, that we have no boundaries there, even though it seems that we have. So we need to be creative as teachers, and we need to face students, and we need to very carefully also think through the emotional side of teaching. Not only think about how to help them understand all this information and how to succeed in exams. No, more or less we have to respect this wonderful moment of learning that happens only in the moment that the child is living right now. But we all, very often teachers have their mind on the future. How will they succeed in that exam, and how will they I need to do this and this and this. But actually the children, they are living in the moment, and they are full of energy and spirit and inspiration and creative ideas and imagination. And we should cherish that. And how can we create learning environments where children can start to be creative, and they can feel safe to be creative and feel safe to cooperate with each other and think big and think like they could solve the problems in the world, and they can feel their power and become very self-aware of their own possibilities. So William Dilthey said over 100 years ago, he was a great philosophy of educational science, that we should cherish the moment of every day. As a teacher, we should cherish the moment that we are living with the children and make the best of it. So that's a big thing to think through, that when we are working with the children, even in little projects, so how do I see her, how do I talk to her, or how do I let them cooperate together, and how do I create environments where they start to feel that my ideas are important, and I am important, and I am important in this. This what I am learning is important to me, and I understand it. I think this is the most important thing. Why am I learning this? They need to understand it. Not only days and days they are sitting there and learning something and thinking that, what is all this information, and I just have to do it because teacher says you have to learn this. This is important because one day you will need this. Why? Why don't we create learning that we understand right away? I need this to solve that problem. So phenomenal learning aims to that. And I think that, like this very famous Finnish teacher said, Koskeniemi, the most sensitive time for teaching is when children want to learn. And this innate desire to learn must be carefully nurtured. And we all know that we can do whatever we want when the desire is in our mind. You all know what you have achieved in your life. And when you understand that I need this and I can do this and this is important to me, you have done miracles. And this state of mind we should have very often happening in school, that children think that so I want to do this is so easy. And then the learning just rolls on. It's happening. And phenomenal learning is used to stimulate and sustain this desire. This is how I think of phenomenal learning. Okay, and I can talk about this later on. This is the Dilthus exact words. Every moment of growth should be filled with richness of value. I think it's very beautiful. We should think of that even as adults, that here I am now. How can I make this moment count to be memorable? It is not very memorable if I spend it here reading bored to death newspapers. That is something we need to do sometimes, but we need to be in contact with each other and we need to feel that. And I think that this is one key to that so many pupils have problems to concentrate and to be interested in schooling, because they don't understand why, and they don't really feel that there is any richness in the moment that they are experiencing, but it's too similar every day. And I don't mean that you shouldn't teach or that schooling shouldn't be sometimes boring. That's life. They have to learn what life is, but it shouldn't be the same all the time, and it shouldn't be all adult-centered. When you put child in the middle of learning, then there's possibilities for anything. Okay. I also think that we should more move from teaching to I didn't mean to write teaching, from teaching to teaching. I meant to write from teaching to guiding and mentoring and designing teaching. And through phenomenal driven learning design process that I developed, you can design teaching so richly and so carefully that when the project starts, you can really concentrate on doing with the children. You don't have to anymore be in charge all the time, because the design is so well done. Well, what phenomenal learning is? I've gathered this information from literature and research, and I have studied that in phenomenal driven learning we have these 6 key elements that need to be present or need to happen that you can call learning phenomenal. First of all, it has to be based on curriculum, goals and objectives, and also evaluation. It needs to be well established in national core curriculum goals. You just can't create something and think that this is important. In Finland, it's very important that we follow the curriculum. So you can create your learning entity from those disciplines, different subjects, and very carefully plan how you evaluate everything, and how children evaluate themselves. Also, you need to respect the transversal competencies, 21st century competencies, and future skills, and of course values of how to also just growing up children, how to behave and how to work, all these things. Then it is systemic. It's always a learning process where you can plan the learning process so that the different layers of doing things, they create this whole learning process together. And the pupils have ownership on their learning, and they can be creative, they can be reflective, they can be thinking problem-based things, asking questions, and they can change perspectives. This is a thing that I borrowed from drama education. Dorothy Hedgott has this great thing she calls that in drama you can change perspectives, be in different roles, and this is also something we should allow children to do. They can be journalists or archaeologists, or they can be astronauts, or they can be just sharing their knowledge, for example, how to make a blog or something. Not always be pupils. And of course, in this process of learning, the practical understanding of world becomes theoretical and deep understanding of how things are. For example, understanding maths in real world. How could I use my math skills in real world? It's always also you can use different learning methodologies in phenomenal learning. It's just not one. You can use your competencies you have gained as teachers. So many possibilities, from drama to project-based learning or problem-based learning. All the things you can collect and use. And children learn these different methods too, and they start understanding how to use them for their benefit. And it's always also contextual. It's contextual in the place where they do the things because it's very different to study seaside in Kokkola than to study in Middle Finland. So it's contextual in that sense. It's contextual in that sense that you are in Spain or you are in Finland. The winter, it's so different. But it's also contextual so that you have to respect the situation and the class and the pupils and their special needs. Certainly you understand this, of course, this is obvious. But this is also important. There always needs to be a link between the output and real life. So what you do means something. You understand that this is meaningful, like you can create a special song for your folk festival or something. So you have meaning for what you're doing, and the outcome is not more important than the process, because the process is where the learning actually happens, and the understanding of me as a learner, what I can, what I can. It's holistic, looking world from 360 perspective, looking real life phenomena, and it's also authentic, so that you can cooperate with the surrounding society. This is very Deweyan thing, like democracy, school as a little democracy, and interaction with the world surrounding the school, and you choose different learning environments, also digital or virtual. You can also use very real learning environments and virtual learning environments, or we can cooperate with a school that is in another country. And of course we can use different experts. So these are just some summaries of what phenomenal learning is, and now just very shortly I will show some connections between Dewey. Like these yellow sentences are Dewey's ideas. Like you can see the connections with phenomenal learning. So always towards orientation towards goals is important. Interdisciplinary approach, So in phenomenal learning, you have to have multiple disciplines integrated. It's just not 2 or 3. Children development stages are very, very important. You have to really design phenomenal learning according to what children can or can't do. Well, member society, student centers, active learning, interaction, learners' desires, needs, aspiration and goals. This is very much what Dewey highlights, that you always have to plan teaching according to learners' desires, needs, aspiration and goals. So, and freedom of movement. It's amazing how Dewey writes years and years ago that children need to have freedom to move when they are learning. And so much of my schooling was this. And I was like, teacher, because I wanted to move. I was always sitting, I was like, oh. But if you just let them even move in the classroom and think through things, it's amazing what happens if you just really break boundaries. Decision making, matter modification, it's important too, that you give them this great learning task and they start to think that what can be done from this and what can be designed from that. This is material modification. Well, problem-based continued learning, the principle of continuity, learning situation, their connection with children's everyday life. Exciting and emerging experience and their interaction. Existing and emerging experience. So, as Dewey says, all learning starts from our own experience. Without our experience, our senses, our imagination, it's actually not happening. It's just something you try to copy and it doesn't stay. But when it connects to your experience and you start to connect your experience to the information, you start creating deep understanding. Yes, you can see. Imagination, hands-on, emotion and senses. We all have to respect all these sides in phenomenon-based learning. And hands-on is a good thing to remember. Like now, you haven't had lots to do, but this is a lecture for adults. But anyway, if I would talk this long to children, I would have failed. Hands-on, let them do and feel. I will only now show you a few examples and then I will, because I just want to show you this example. Well, this is one example of phenomenal driven learning entity, like in a Viking village. What could you have done? This is like the visualization of the design, but before that you have to have really careful work with the curriculum and everything. But you could have these learning tasks, and that creates this understanding of living life in the Viking village. You can read and you can probably imagine what that could be in your class or in your context. But all these things require that you have carefully planned that what codes from which disciplines will be aimed through this working and how do we evaluate it. So that should be done too. Then there's another example. This is actually I did this with my class many years ago, as Marianne certainly remembers. And I did, it was much bigger even, but here are a few examples. Medieval times at Turku market exhibition. I can't say it. So it was created through these 5 elements, learning task. I was integrating history, maths, handcrafts, arts, literacy, Finnish, music, and also some English. And we had these different learning tasks where children, or my pupils, they were 6th graders, were all active doers. We have these, first we did these books about estates. They had to understand different roles in those days, so they gathered information and created books. And what was the shipping and shopping in the Baltic seas back then. Then also drama, storytelling. So together they created these writings and living the weather. I don't know what happened. Well, we made drama and we write books and we like created stories of those peasants and merchants and clergymen and started to imagine what that life could have been. And then we also hand printed books and made some graphics and used copper and graphics and they created these books by their hands like they did back then. And then we have all these things we did with different professionals from Kokkola. So they learned what handcrafts from medieval times that still is done today. And then also there was this entrepreneurship learning experience because then we had this medieval marketplace where they all the things they have done were available and we counted the prices and how could you sell them. And in addition to this, we also made a play about holding. So we had this medieval theater play that we created and wrote together, and it was amazing. There are some pictures about this kind of happening. So active, integrated discipline, problem-based learning process, connection to child's life, so on. So that's phenomenon-based learning. Okay, yes, I found this. I maybe can send you the link. So you can create these little snowflakes with your pupils if you have little pupils. There is this short instruction that I made with my pupils 10 years ago. I found it, so I can share the link to you. Greetings from Finland. And so today I will not bother you anymore, but this is the actual phenomenon-driven learning entity design process model I created, and I will tell you about this more next time, and I will carefully tell you how do you design phenomenon-driven learning, and I will try to be very, I don't know the word, I just try to say it to you very well, and I have a video and I have materials that I will share to you back next time. So we will learn how to design phenomenon-driven learning. We have all these steps, I will tell you about those. So yes, this is my goal. Hopefully you got something from this. This picture is actually created by artificial intelligence. I made it with artificial intelligence a few weeks ago. Doesn't this first seem like a real picture, and then you can see that, okay, it's not a real picture. There are funny hands. Okay. But this is only something that I want you to say before we have a break, that we need to adapt and understand the technology that we are living now. Also artificial intelligence says, how do we start understanding and using it at school? Artificial intelligence can give tools to those pupils that can draw to create amazing art pieces. You can create essays by it. So we have to think through. I would have loads of things to say about digital learning, but we don't have time for that. Maybe I will have something about that next project, because it's very important too. But now, let's fill each moment of growth with richness and enjoy our life as teachers. Sorry, I think I talked too much, but I told you that when I started to talk about phenomenon-driven learning, I lose time. Maybe we have a little break now and